I'm never going to give up. I'm never going to give up. We have to find her.
I'm Katie Corman, a reporter for Fox 2 in St. Louis. In the fall of 2018, I had the opportunity to revisit an unsolved case, a case that has haunted the St. Louis area for, at the time, 13 years. The disappearance of Amanda Jones has continued to confuse and frustrate law enforcement, her family, and the greater community for all this time. She was a 26-year-old woman from Jefferson County, Missouri, 8.5 months pregnant, and she disappeared on August 14th, 2005, without a trace. I have lived in the St. Louis area going on 5 years now. This was a case that was new to me when it was brought to my attention in August of 2018. But this is a case that, again, has impacted a lot of people and has stuck with people over the years, including my colleague, Andy Banker, who developed relationships, did strong investigative work, and did a lot of reporting on this case in the beginning.
Yeah, we really covered the heck out of this from day one. And there was something that just grabbed you right away about Amanda's photo. And that really was our first introduction to the case. I guess her parents, Huey and Bertha Probst, contacted authorities when they couldn't find her. 8.5 months pregnant. She already had a daughter by a different marriage that had ended, a 4-year-old daughter. So she's expecting another child, and she just vanishes. There's a lot to it, and we're going to get into it, I know. But I go back to, our first introduction. Authorities, after Amanda's parents had contacted them, they contacted us. I mean, this was serious right away, and there was no explanation for her to leave, and they gave us that photo and asked us to put it on the air. And so we need information about what happened to Amanda Jones.
Andy, in our line of work, we often hear from people asking us just to help find a missing person. A lot of missing kids, a lot of runaways, things like that. But typically, I would say a lot of times those people are found pretty quickly, within a day, a couple of days, a couple of hours even.
Yes, and this is unconscionable that it's gone on this long.
Tell us about some of those early days when the news first comes out. There's not a lot of the details about how or why or who's all involved. What do you remember from those initial reports?
Mostly her family. Her mom and dad, Huey and Bertha Probst, her sister Carrie, her uncle Walt Bowers sticks out to me. And the photos of Amanda, and just it really had a hold on that community and still does. What sticks out most is my memories of just meeting her family and how genuine, passionate, and heartbroken they were. And what breaks my heart even now, Kate, is that we started going through my old files to get you up to speed so you could dig into this again and not let it drop. I'm so glad you're doing this, and to be part of it with you now in some small way. But we went through my old notes. I found a pin, a button that you would pin on your shirt, just with Amanda's photo and her name. And there was a purple ribbon on there. Purple was her favorite color. They released purple balloons from time to time at prayer services for her. And I think of how much that weighed on me then. And not that it doesn't now, and not that I never think about her, because I still do. But so much of my life has gone on, and so many other stories we've covered, and on and on. But her family and the ones who knew her best and loved her most are still stuck where they were 13 years ago, going on 14 years ago, without an answer. They're still in the same spot, and they just need to know.
And they absolutely shared that grief, that sadness, that frustration. They shared all of that with me, and I felt it even 13 years later. Here's a little bit from Huey and Bertha Probst.
Amanda.
She was literally my best friend. She was the most compassionate, loving person that anybody would want to meet. And she was a family person. She was always around us, after work, weekends, whatever. We spent a lot of time together. And she loved to help people. She loved to help her friends. She was just a beautiful soul.
What was she like as a kid?
Daddy's girl.
Yeah.
She was daddy's girl.
Do you mind talking about the toll this has taken on the family?
It's physical. His health has gone down tremendously since this all happened. Mine as well. It's pretty much torn the kids apart,
Yeah.
the brother and sister. Amanda was like,
A mom.
well, yeah, like a mom to him, but she was like the glue that hold everything together type person.
Yeah.
She would always be the one to step in if there was an argument or if anything, she was always the one to fix everything. And she's not there to fix it anymore.
So their daughter, Amanda Jones, 8.5 months pregnant when she disappeared. The father of her unborn child is reportedly the last person to have seen her. The two of them met at the Hillsborough Civic Center on August 14th, 2005. They were said to have been meeting around 1 p.m. During that meeting, Amanda took a phone call from a relative at approximately 1:15. After that meeting, no one else has seen or heard from her since. Later that night, Amanda's blue 1997 Pontiac Sunfire was found unlocked and abandoned in the Civic Center parking lot. Her purse, car keys, wallet, cell phone still haven't been recovered. So, Andy, when we're talking about this Hillsborough Civic Center, tell me a little bit about what you remember about that location. What's significant about this place?
Well, the Civic Center, it's kind of like you may think, if you're not familiar with Hillsborough, Missouri, which is the county seat of Jefferson County, the last place she was seen alive, just south of St. Louis. It's kind of like the town center. That's where they would have the county fair and other big events, wedding receptions. I think Amanda met this man at a holiday party there, right? His name's Brian Westfall, by the way. Never been identified as a suspect. But so that's where they found her car, and that's where the last known place that she was alive, which is not to presume that she's dead, but no one has seen her since somebody saw her there. And this was a Sunday, August 14th, 2005. She'd been to church with her parents, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she went to have this meeting to discuss the future of the child that she would be bringing into the world in a matter of days or weeks.
Yeah, Brian Westfall, for the record, has always maintained that he is not only not the child's father, but has had nothing to do with Amanda's disappearance.
Correct. But he's still a big centerpiece of the investigation. And the reasons for that will unfold as this podcast does and as we continue through the future episodes here. But I just remember that blue car sitting there and how freaky it seemed, for lack of a better term, not just to us in the media, but to the investigators, that there were no keys, no phone, no purse. And they knew she took a phone call in the car.
And what we did learn from investigators was there was no sign of a struggle
Right.
outside or inside her car.
And I believe the car door was ajar. It was not wide open, but it wasn't closed. And so she was adding to the suspicious nature of this disappearance is that it just wasn't in her makeup, according to anyone who knew her, that she would just go. I mean, she had a good job. She had a good life. She prepared her home for this child she was going to be bringing home. I think she was just going to meet the man she thought was the father to talk about his role, if any, whatever, any kind of financial support, whatever. They had things to talk about, right? We
Sure.
don't know. Nobody knows except those two people. But there was no indication that she was distraught or thinking, my gosh, I got to get out. I can't handle this. Is overwhelmingly. By all accounts, she was looking forward to having her baby, which was to be a son. Other details followed. They came back to me. She was seen on that Sunday.
On
at
her
a-
way to go meet him.
Yes, stopped at a Walgreens. But there's video of her in the store. And what did she buy? Nothing to indicate she was going to leave or go away or take a trip. She bought a
Soda
soda, a Dr. Pepper, and some hairspray.
and a keychain.
And and one of those keychains with the little,
Hooks on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
and that was it. And we had that video and then a photo from the church with her parents taken that day. And then they never saw her again. But after that, we covered prayer services.
There was a lot of activity, a lot of hustle and bustle in those days immediately following her disappearance. Search parties out, people out talking, just asking questions. Talk to me about some of the people you encountered in those first few days who were just there trying to help.
Well, again, her family just sticks out to me. All her relatives, her aunts, uncles, but her sister Carrie is the one that, just talking to you now, she seems present with me here. And I remember one report we did specifically where we followed her around, passing out flyers, saying, "We find my sister. We got to find my sister."
She's 9 months pregnant. She's been missing since Sunday. Her name's Amanda Jones.
Carrie Probst and her brother Brian have taken their message, their flyers, to just about every corner of Jefferson County.
We're trying to go wherever we can, possibly where anyone may have seen her or where she may be going. We're probably going to try to go over to Ruby Tuesdays.
The manager here agrees to put a flyer in the window.
She's age 27, height 5'7".
Now surveillance video from a Walgreens shows what the flyer cannot. Amanda Jones, pink top, her flowered skirt. Investigators say she'd stopped here to buy a soda and hairspray about 12:30 in the afternoon Sunday. Friends and family say there's no way she wandered off.
She couldn't walk far enough to wander anywhere.
She couldn't.
No.
Womack found Jones' unlocked abandoned car at the Hillsborough Civic Center Sunday night. Jones was to meet 38-year-old Brian Westfall of DeSoto here. Westfall is the father of the child she's expecting. Police do not consider him a suspect. Jones' sister says in the past, Westfall told Jones he wanted nothing to do with the baby. Jones' family already knows she's having a boy.
We want her to be alive, well, and either still pregnant or have had the baby and got the baby with her.
With Root Insurance, it's easy to save because your driving is the #1 factor in your rate. You could save hundreds on your car insurance. And
Gosh, I can only imagine how heartbreaking, how scary, how a million emotions you'd feel having your big sister just vanish. Besides her being pregnant, besides her being a mother,
Yeah.
just having your best friend disappear has just got to be one of the worst feelings. For people who aren't familiar with the area that we're talking about, let's talk a little bit about Jefferson County. So Jefferson County is the county immediately south of St. Louis County. It covers about 670 square miles. It is right now in this year approaching 225 to 250,000 people. There's been a lot of development in Jefferson County over the last 13 years, but give us an idea of what that area looked like back then.
There's a little bit of suburban feel, but the predominant feel is a rural county, which is sort of strange because it's really a part of the metropolitan area. It's not greatly distant from the city of St. Louis. It's just in the surrounding collar, but it does have this sort of country, down home feel where everyone seems to know everybody.
You've talked about the flyers. We know there were buttons. We know there were T-shirts.
Yeah.
How else were people getting the word out?
Word of mouth, and nothing sort of expresses that better than a friend of hers I met one day who parked his truck across from the Civic Center, this fairgrounds, where she disappeared from. And he just parked his truck and he painted a message on his truck.
I couldn't just sit by no more. I had to do something. I didn't have no plywood or nothing else, so I just got the spray paint out and painted it.
Jones' friend Jeff Lovejoy has painted his truck with the message, "Please help. Did you drive by here Sunday?" and parked it outside the Civic Center in Hillsborough. Investigators say this is the last place anyone has seen Amanda Jones. They say Brian Westfall, who Jones' family says is the father of her unborn son, met Jones here Sunday. Afterward, Jones vanished. Her car left on the parking lot. The sheriff says Westfall is not a suspect.
The last sighting that we had, according to her male friend, was that as he was driving off the parking lot, he saw her sitting in her car. If you had a family member that was 9 months pregnant and was missing, and it was uncharacteristic for that family member to be missing, you'd want us to pull in every available resource and concentrate on that case as well. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Which for now means focusing on the area around the Civic Center, where Jeff Lovejoy says he'll be with his truck as long as it takes.
99% of people, 99.9, are just going to drive by and not think it's nothing. But if that 0.1% stops by and it comes up with something, I'll sit out there for a week if I had to,
So hearing him and thinking about that truck, it just...
He really did. He took like a big stencil and spray painted the side of his truck.
Yeah. And it was funny that you asked, how did people get the word out? Well, that's sort of a creative way. But, like I said, there's that small rural feel all over Jefferson County, even though there are some kind of traditional suburbs sprinkled in. But it just takes you back. And it points to how much this mattered to everyone. They all cared. And I remember it was about a week or so after she disappeared. There was a prayer service at the fairgrounds. And I mentioned earlier, they released purple balloons in her honor, in her memory, and in the hope that we wouldn't be here all these years later still wondering what was going on.
I believe it. I believe she's going to come home.
It was a very emotional time. And I remember her uncle, Walt Bowers. I can still picture him now as if I'm standing there next to him at this prayer service. And we joined in. We covered the event, but man, I prayed. And I still do.
I believe that today that's something that we can pray about, that God would give the angels charge over Amanda.
But there's just, I don't know, there's an ambiance there, a feeling you get from being there. And I think hearing of what it was like to be there may help people get their arms around why this still has such a hold on so many.
We're going to hang on to hope. We're going to believe the best. We're going to believe God to give us a miracle.
So as we move forward with this podcast, we're going to share with you everything that we've gathered over the years. Andy from the very beginning, myself from over the last 6 months or so, as I went back and re-interviewed the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, Amanda's family, her parents, her sister, friends of hers, her daughter, Hannah, her then 4-year-old daughter who just turned 18 years old and is about to graduate high school. We have spoken to them. We're going to share that information with you. We are committed to getting the word out and to helping bring some answers to Amanda's family.
And, we're going to almost go back through your reporting now to where we all started. And I remember as those days developed, as we worked through those prayer services and her sister passing out the flyers, but everything as that started to evolve, all roads led in one direction in terms of the investigation. And there are reasons for that. And we're going to explore those reasons. And a lot of those reasons for that then still haven't gone away from what you've learned as you've dug back into this, Kate.
The FBI is offering a $20,000 reward for information leading to the location of Amanda Jones and her unborn child, and or for information leading to the identity of the person or people involved with their disappearance. Thank you for listening. We hope you will join us for our next episode. I'm Katie Corman.
Tribune Audio Network.
I'm never going to give up. I'm never going to give up. We have to find her.
I'm Katie Corman, a reporter for Fox 2 in St. Louis, Missouri. Thank you for joining us for episode 2 of our investigation into the disappearance of Amanda Jones. Amanda was a 26-year-old woman who was 8.5 months pregnant when she disappeared from Hillsborough, Missouri on August 14th, 2005. The last known person to have seen Amanda was the person she believed to be the father of her unborn child. We'll tell you a little bit about how the two of them met and why he has continued to be such a central figure in this investigation. But first, let's tell you a little bit about Amanda. My colleague, Andy Banker, has been investigating this case since the day Amanda disappeared. Andy, you have had a lot of interaction with Amanda's family, certainly in the beginning of this investigation. Tell me a little bit about what you learned about Amanda.
You know, I think pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? And through talking to them and looking at her photos so often and so frequently, a bunch of different photos, it really does. It feels like you not only know them, but you know her. I almost feel like I can hear her voice, even though we never had a conversation, you know. But from what I knew about her, family meant everything. She was a divorced mom. She had a 4-year-old daughter, and she later became pregnant and was, by all accounts, excited about having this second child, even if that meant raising him on her own. And I say him because she knew, her family told me, her parents, Huey and Bertha Probst, told me that she knew she was going to have a son.
A son that she planned to name Hayden.
Hayden. Yeah. I even was in Hayden's, what would have been his bedroom. You know, she was just all geared up. She had a great job. She worked for Eagle Bank, I think, at the time, had a nice little home in Peevely, very well kept, nice neighborhood. So, you know, I say all that because she just did not seem to be someone who was distraught, even though it might not have been the most ideal of circumstances. She seemed to be at peace with her life and the future, and not only having her daughter Hannah, but having a little brother for Hannah to bring home very soon, which would have been, a matter of days or a couple of weeks at most, and the family was going to grow.
Amanda Jones was born Amanda Probst, October 6, 1978, to Huey and Bertha Probst. Amanda had an older brother, Brian, and eventually a younger sister named Carrie. They describe her as just being the light of all of their lives.
But they all describe her as just a wonderful person.
Yeah. Amanda's mother tells me Amanda was her best friend. Carrie says that Amanda was like a second mom to her, that she was her best friend, her big sister, a second mother, her confidant, her protector, all wrapped into one. Here's her sister, Carrie Alfred.
She's 8 years older than me, but that age difference didn't matter. I mean, she was my best friend. I mean, stuff I couldn't tell my mom. Of course, I told my big sister. I remember one night I got stood up for a date, and Amanda was at her bowling, and I called her, but it didn't matter. She walked off the lane and said, "I got to take this." Stood there and talked to me till I calmed down and told me everything's going to be okay. He stood you up. It's his loss. You know, anybody be lucky to have you. Anytime I need her, she 100% there for me. Anytime she needed me, I was there.
This is why I stopped shopping on Amazon, and you should too. Don't spend another dime on Amazon until you watch.
Her parents tell me
to the public is, whatever that is. And then I get all these videos I got to look through. We got people that are breaking down a video that somebody else did, and they're criticizing us, and they're making money off of Seth's son, and they're doing all this craziness. Look,
those are true vulture calls. When they're sitting there and taking a conversation that Tony is having, which is an actual conversation, they're discussing it. It's not a podcast. And then they want to sit there and put it next to their little will of pay me money. Why they're sitting there in their nice little chair online with their little thing behind them, twirling her hair and pushing her glasses up while she's wanting everybody to buy a membership and consider to, that's not helping me find my son. So who gives you the right to sit there and criticize this man that's volunteering his time to help me find my son?
Well,
you're sitting there making $1,000 off of a podcast and you haven't got out of your fucking chair.
Well, and Seth, you're right. What I want to say is, I'm easy to get a hold of. Very, very easy to get a hold of. I'm open to having a conversation with anybody. In the world I live in, for Seth, for my job, I cannot get away from my phone. So if you see me looking down at my phone, it's because I've got messages coming in from Seth's team. It's because I've got customers that are texting me. And at the end of the day, the time that I spend on here with you, Pascal, and your platform, it's volunteer time. It doesn't pay my bills. So life for me doesn't stop, unfortunately. I have to keep working for Seth, working for my company. So, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to say, you've been working with me now for 3 months. Do you feel like I'm half focused, full focused? What do you feel like, Pascal?
I think you're in it 110%. I mean, you put your whole body into this whole thing. I commend you because you're not only doing this for Sebastian, you're also doing this for Caleb as well. And then also holding it down. You still are a dad. You still have other things that are going on in your life. You know what I mean? So, I've never had any thoughts in the negative for the contribution that you're doing for these two young men, period.
I appreciate it 100%, Tony. I know that you don't do anything unless you ask me first. You ask me what the game plan is. We communicate. And some of your people in chat, Pascal.
Yeah.
T-Rev's my brother. I'm not talking about T-Rev. I'm not talking
Lord.
about, I know you don't like me mentioning other creative
Special teams, special plays, special players.
Talking about somebody making money.
It's been 2.5 months since we've seen anything resembling Sebastian Rogers. So tensions are going to be high. The nerves are going to be extremely sensitive. And raw.
If you have any goodness in your heart at all, either cover the case and help create awareness, get out from behind your computer, come help search, donate, do something like that. Or you know what, go to something else because it's hurting everybody other than me. It doesn't hurt me, whatever, but it's hurting Seth. It's hurting everybody involved for people to get involved in a negative way. And that's what we're saying is if you're making money off this man's child, then be grateful for that. I have no issue with people making money off covering a case. Pascal, I love it. That's what you do for a living, but you keep it real. You keep it factual. You're asking questions. You're not making unfounded comments. If you actually are going to have the goal to make money off of somebody's missing child, then do it with spreading the positive word. That's what we're asking. Because without him losing his child, you're not making money talking about his child. There's nothing to talk about.
Yeah, I get it. But I know that we can talk about this for a while, right? Because there's been a lot of tension building up for a while now. Okay. And I totally understand, right? Some people are in the chat saying, "Hey, Seth, I had it up, but the chat's been flying." So, but they basically said, "Hey, Seth, this is your son. You do what you need to do, what you see best to find your son. Forget the outside noise, because at the end of the day, we're trying to find Sebastian, right?" So,
my only issue with that, Pascal, is first of all, I don't have social media. I have YouTube, and since Tony came around, you stay off YouTube. Okay, do I have to? Yes, you have to stay off of YouTube.
Right.
So I stay off of YouTube. But that still doesn't mean that it doesn't get back to me. It doesn't get back to me. It gets back to me that, some lady going to sit on her fat little throne and talk about my weight. And it's like, you got a lot of room to talk. But you also want somebody to come put their hands on me. Just remember, you live in Tennessee, lady. If you're instigating assault on a law enforcement officer, that's time.
Right.
You're not a law enforcement officer, bub.
The drama that I totally understand how you feel. Like, I understand where you're coming from. I hear you.
I have too many volunteers out there that put their life in the line to go hand out flyers, walk through forests, walk through where there's snakes, ticks. One of my volunteers literally had spotted Rocky Mountain fever from a tick bite. People don't know what my volunteers are going through.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then you want to add more because you want to sit there and, have people follow people around.
Way we can add violin music?
Get a life. You sure don't have a kid that's missing. Right. And if you're not a coward, you want to say something to my face, there's my door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I heard that invitation, right?
On the internet.
And that's not good. That's never good. And that's not how you do things out here, guys. That's not how you do things. But okay, I think we've gotten to you gotten a chance to get some things off your chest. Understandably, there's been a lot of tension as of late. But let's get back to what we're here for, right? Which is getting to the facts and figuring out where Sebastian is. And I understand your frustration, brother. I really do. And I can only imagine what you're going through. But let's get back into this, shall we? So the thing is okay, we had the Nancy Grace and for conversation and all that.
Sister's calling me, and she stood there and talked to me till I calmed down, told me everything's going to be okay. He stood you up. It's his loss. You know, anybody be lucky to have you. Anytime I need her, she 100% there for me. Anytime she needed me, I was there.
Most people have no clue that in 2023, the best way to make money on Amazon is not with physical.
Her parents tell me that she was a social butterfly, had lots of friends, lots of girlfriends, lots of guy friends. She was very popular and always chatting on the phone. They say she was on the phone or talking to people all the time.
And where else was she? At the bowling alley.
The bowling alley.
Right? She could bowl.
She was quite
With the
a
best of
bowler,
them.
they say.
Yeah, she had trophies, and I remember looking at those. Oh man! So all of this just compounds the tragedy and the frustration of not knowing what happened to her. She wouldn't walk away from this life.
So, Andy, you mentioned that Amanda worked at Eagle Bank, and it was actually December of 2004. She was at her company's holiday party at the Hillsborough Civic Center, where she met Brian Westfall. Before she met Brian, Amanda had recently ended a relationship with another man that she had been dating. I spoke with her best friend, Amanda Lovejoy, who told me a little bit about Amanda's meeting with Brian.
She was at this party and met Brian, who I guess was working the party. And they, I guess, hit it off, were talking and stuff. And one thing led to another, and they went back to his place, which was out of character for her. But, she had just, she had been seeing someone, and they were no longer seeing each other. So things happened. And they spent that night together.
How did they leave it? Was it like, we'll hang out again, or that was fun, but we're not planning to talk again?
I don't really know how they left it. She hadn't really had any contact with him again until she found out she was pregnant. And at that point, she was kind of like, well, it could be his, or it could have been the other guy that I had been dating, because she didn't know how far along she was yet. And then when she got the confirmation of when she got pregnant, then she knew there was no possibility it could have been the guy that she was dating, that it had to be Brian.
Well, he was involved at that Civic Center, right? I think he had keys to the place. And the Civic Center in Hillsborough, Missouri, again, this is in Jefferson County outside of St. Louis, is sort of like it's Hillsborough's the county seat, and the Civic Center is where they have things like holiday parties or wedding receptions, and the county fair, I believe. At least they did back at the time, the Jefferson County Fair. So that's pretty central location. And that's where they saw each other the day she disappeared, and that's the last place anyone was known to have seen her alive. And that's why Brian Westfall is such a central figure to the case, not only because Amanda claims that he was the father of her unborn child, but because he's the last person to see her.
So after finding out she was pregnant and narrowing the dates down, becoming pretty confident that it was Brian Westfall's baby, her friends, her family tell me that she reached out to him to set up a meeting, an opportunity to tell him what she felt was the good news. And he agreed to meet with her at the Civic Center. And Amanda brought her then 4-year-old daughter, Hannah, along with her. Here's Amanda's friend, Miranda Lovejoy.
She was excited that she was pregnant, but yes, she was, nervous to have to tell him that she was pregnant, because she firmly believed that, you know, he should play a role in his child's life. You know, she could have, you know, she could have just never said anything to him and had the baby on her own and never said anything to him about it at all, which, you know, we all know probably would have been the best thing.
Here's Amanda's mom, Bertha Probst.
She went to meet him to tell him, her and Hannah went, and met him at the Civic Center. That's where he wanted to meet her. Everything was at the Civic Center. Met her there, and she told him that she was pregnant. Well, he denied it, and he said that he would pay her for an abortion. Well, that's when Hannah spoke up and said, "You're not going to hurt my baby." She knew what an abortion meant. She knew that meant to kill the baby.
Yeah.
And so if he wasn't thinking that was his baby, why would you offer somebody money for an abortion? But she told him, she said no. She said, "I don't believe in abortions. I will raise this baby on my own like I have Hannah."
So, Andy, needless to say, I don't think that was the reaction she was hoping for. But nonetheless, her friends tell me that she was ready to move forward and raise this child on her own.
Yes, this was long before her disappearance, right? And this was long before their last meeting, which was the last known meeting she ever had with another person. So no alarm bells really went off then.
Interesting that you use that term, because that was sort of what her family told me about that day that she chose to meet him at the Civic Center on August 14th, 2005, was when an opportunity was set up for her to meet with Brian to discuss the future of baby Hayden. There was no alarm bells then either.
No reason. She did not go there fearing like something might go wrong. They had some business between them she wanted to address and take care of. And
the two had very little communication during pregnancy, but she moved forward, setting up a nursery, which you saw firsthand, and preparing for life as a single mother of two. Again, Brian Westfall has always maintained that he is not the child's father, but he was the last person to see her, which is why law enforcement, even back then, said he would be a focus of their investigation.
yeah, I mean, it's just common sense, right? And I remember that when we spoke to we talked earlier about Sheriff Glenn Boyer. He was the one who took the case. So you have to follow leads. They asked for us to put her photo on TV, share the story, see if anyone could come up with any other place she may have gone or may have ended up after she met with Brian Westfall. But they knew all along that the meeting did take place, and he didn't deny that he saw her on the day she disappeared. But a lot of the other things he said at the time didn't necessarily check out or add up. But that wasn't what the sheriff was, so interested in him for at the outset. Again, it was just because he, of course, was the last person to see her. Here's Sheriff Glenn Boyer all those years ago.
That would be a natural course of any investigation, that you talk to any individuals that might have any possible leads. Westfall certainly is a person of keen interest to us, simply because by his own admittance, he was the last one to see her that we're aware of.
And one thing that sticks out for me, Katie, is that he mentioned the name Brian Westfall. It wasn't something that they were trying to hide or shield him from, Westfall, of the knowledge that he was at the center of this, even though the sheriff maintained then, and I believe all along, that he, like in his heart, he never seemed to think that Westfall was a suspect per se. Just he had more of a feeling that he's got some answers that are going to lead to where we want to go with this investigation. We're going to be able to figure this out. We need this guy's help. But of course, it never got there.
Let's go through the timeline of that day, August 14th, 2005. We know from Amanda's friends, Amanda's family, that at some point in the days or within a week leading up to that day, she had reached out to Brian. She wanted to let him know, one, that she was about to give birth.
Right. She was getting close to.
She was planning to have a boy, which she thought may have made a difference to him. Maybe hearing that it was going to be a son, he might want to be involved. Either way, she wanted to give him the opportunity to step up. She wanted to give him the opportunity to be involved and be present when Hayden was born. So the morning of August 14th, 2005, she got a phone call from Brian Westfall. Here's her parents describing what that conversation entailed.
That Sunday morning, Mandy called the house from her home. And she said, Dad, you'll never guess who just called. I said, who was it? She said, Brian. Brian Westfall. And he wanted to meet and talk. I think she was in the hopes that morning that he was ready to
take responsibility. Yeah.
But it didn't happen.
So anyway, she came to church that day. She was a little bit late because of that phone call, but everybody in there looked at her. I mean, she was just grinning from ear to ear. I mean, she had this glow on her face. Like,
she did.
Oh, it was just, I'll never forget it. It was just amazing. And she was dressed in all pink. She had a pink shirt on, a pink and white skirt on, pink flip-flops, pink purse. I don't know what more pink she could have had on, but she was waddling up a storm because she was so heavy from the baby and everything, you know. And even the preacher said to her how glowing she was that day and how happy. You know, we left church. She went out in the parking lot and she told Hannah, you know, you go with Grandma and Grandpa and Mommy will see you in a couple hours. Well, Hannah knew when Mama said she was going to be somewhere that she would be there. Okay, so
if not, she would call.
She would call.
So again, they mentioned that pink shirt, the pink skirt, the pink flip-flops, that outfit, that from that photograph, that last photograph we've seen of Amanda so many times.
And striking to me is that they also mention what their preacher or pastor noticed about her, that she was glowing. They said she was waddling because she was so heavy because she was so close to giving birth. But they remember all those little details, and it just all goes to that same feeling that they have and that we've shared and that we've picked up on, that she was not running away from this. There was, you know, she was embracing it.
Hannah knew that when Mom said she'd see you in a couple hours, that she'd see you in a couple hours. There was no doubt in their mind that they were going to see her again. Even as she went to go kind of face this unfortunate situation head on, they didn't have any doubt that she was going to be okay.
Right. And they had no expectation that she was in any danger. So she meets her parents and they go to church, and that goes up until around 12:30 in the afternoon. And then she's going to leave and go to the meeting with Brian Westfall at the Hillsborough Civic Center at 1:00. We know those things happened.
They didn't have any worry that they weren't going to see Amanda again, but they still knew that it was a tense, uncomfortable scenario for everybody to be involved in. And so much so that her sister Carrie had this gut instinct with her. Again, Amanda's 8.5 months pregnant. Her parents tell us she's already having. It was a hot August day in Missouri. Carrie felt like she should be there.
Right. There was one person did not have a good feeling about this, who was worried. And I think Amanda kind of rather insistent about, hey, I'll go with you. But that didn't happen.
Before she left, I said, why don't I go with you? Let me go with you. I have my own car. Let me go with you. No, Carrie, I need to do this on my own. I'll be fine. I'm like, please. She goes, no, Carrie. Stay with Mom and Hannah. Yeah, I'll be fine.
Why did you offer that?
I had a gut feeling. I just had a gut feeling. Because, you know, first of all, when she told him she was pregnant, he wanted her to get an abortion. She said no because she was against that. We all are. Then he went, you know, then he didn't talk to her for pretty much the whole time she was pregnant. Then after she contacts him, you know, that he's about to be born and everything, and she just wants to know if he wants to be in his life or not, he all of a sudden contacts her and wants to meet. I just had a bad feeling. But instead of following my gut feeling, I let her go alone. I had my own car. I could have followed her and I didn't do it. And if I would have followed her, she might still be here today and Hayden would be too. But I didn't do it. I listened to her instead and went with my mom and dad. And she never came home.
I can't even imagine.
That is so heartbreaking. And hearing it, I was choking back tears again. And you know, back at the time when I was covering this fresh, I never had those kind of moments with Carrie, Amanda's sister. It was more positive. We got to find her. I never had that introspective feeling from her that she, in some ways, blamed herself. And it just rips my heart out hearing her. That interview was from your recent work. That wasn't from 13, 14 years ago. And gosh, it's so unfair. And she's not the only one. You know, everyone who knew or loved Amanda in some way feels like, God, what could I have done? How could we let this happen? And it's just not their fault. I want to reach out to her and hug her and say, dear, there's nobody to blame for this except whoever is responsible.
That was a hard conversation to have. I didn't, this was my first introduction to these folks. Again, you've known them for years, but this was my first introduction. And looking at Carrie, having a sister of my own and knowing how close we are, it reminds me a lot of the relationship that Carrie described she and Amanda had. And it was unbelievably heartbreaking to listen to her 13 years later carrying this immense guilt and wondering if that decision to not go with made the difference.
Yeah, it didn't. You know, she needs to know that. But that aside, there's probably no convincing her. And on top of all of that, there's just going 13 to 14 years without seeing your sister and without knowing what happened, where she could be, or how she died, or whatever.
Or if she died.
Right. And it's just, it has to stop for these people. They need answers. And hopefully they'll get justice.
So Amanda left church alone. We know based on that surveillance footage that she made a stop at a Walgreens, picked up that Dr. Pepper, that can of hairspray, that keychain. We've seen her in surveillance footage there. And then she went on to the Hillsborough Civic Center where she met Brian Westfall. Again, none of this is disputed. Brian admits that the two of them met that day around 1:00 in the afternoon.
And then she just didn't show. And her, you know, after that meeting, her parents are, that's where the trail ends. And it's never gone one step beyond that Civic Center.
There's been a lot of discussion, a lot of stories, I guess, about what happened once they arrived. There was talk of them maybe going to lunch. There was talk of them just having a conversation there at the Civic Center. We know that Amanda was never seen or heard from after that.
Yeah,
and in our next episode, we're going to get into a little bit more about the different stories, the discrepancies in those stories, and what police have been able to confirm as part of their investigation.
On the timeline, we have her getting there around 1:00.
She got that phone call at 1:15, and that was the last phone call received or made
From her cell phone. You say there's been talk of this scenario and that scenario, and all that talk is from Brian Westfall about whether they went to lunch or whatever they did, and his story changed a little bit. And we'll also dig deeper into that in upcoming episodes.
Around 3:00, Hugh said to Bertha, I guess things are going well since we haven't heard from her yet. But by about 3:15, 3:30, he said he was surprised that they still hadn't heard from her. Even if things were going as good as could be, they were still surprised that she hadn't called yet. And by 3:30, he said he started to get worried. And that's when the family started reaching out to her, trying to get in touch with her via her cell phone, trying to call her house, thinking maybe she'd gone home. And again, they're concerned because they love her, but they're also concerned because she's 8.5 months pregnant,
Yes.
days away from giving birth.
Could she have gone into labor?
Could she be hurt? Could she
Behind
be
the wheel,
ill?
on the side of the road? All those things are going through your mind. And eventually, you know, one thing that also sticks out is they don't know Brian Westfall from Adam.
Right.
Right. They don't know how to get a hold of him. I don't think they know where he lives. So eventually they start thinking, we got to find him.
We
If
know
wanna
she was
find
going
out-
to meet him. We need to find him, find out where she is. We need to go to the last person who saw her.
What does he know? And so then Amanda's mom started trying to figure out where he was, how to get a hold of him, and what he knew.
Well, before we even contacted the police, I got in a phone book and was looking up Brian Westfall. I couldn't find a Brian Westfall, but I found some other Westfalls. So I started calling them. Well, the last one I got, the lady answered the phone and I said, is there a Brian Westfall there? And she said, yes, just a moment. And she handed him the phone. Well, that was his mother. I didn't know it at that time. I told him who I was. And while I was calling, I said, where's my daughter? That's the way I said it. He said, I don't know. I said, well, did she go into labor or anything? No. And I think at that point I hung up because I was so upset.
You didn't hang up. She was, my wife was just
I was
hysterical.
hysterical.
I took the phone and I said, listen, Brian, I said, I'm Amanda's father. And I said, if anything's happened to her, I will hold you responsible.
Hearing Amanda's dad say that, one thing jumps into my head that I remember, you know, there were questions about all those years ago, conflicting statements about whether they actually left the Hillsborough Civic Center. Early on, we reported that they went to lunch.
They said it was a restaurant called Off the Hook.
Off the Hook.
But investigators did go to Off the Hook and looked at surveillance footage there, and the two of them were never seen there together.
Right. So, and that's what we'll get into in our next episode is some of these things didn't match up. And so that sort of added to and snowballed in terms of the investigation, zeroing in one direction.
So in our next episode, we're going to hear a lot from investigators, from the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office to the FBI, hearing what they know about that day, what they've been able to prove, what they've been able to disprove. And I think we're going to answer some of the questions that a lot of people have about this case, about warrants, searches, about where they can search, when they can search, why they can search, and on the flip side, where they can't search and when they can't search. So I think we'll get into a lot more of those details, kind of answer some of those hard questions that people have about this case. And
hopefully jog some memories. It's never too late to remember something. I mean, going back and looking at all my notes now, 12, 13, 14 years old, in some cases a little more updated than that, but certainly more than a decade old, I'm remembering things that I had forgotten. And hopefully some listeners out there, we've been getting feedback from our first episode alone. We're jogging some memories here, and maybe we're, you know, it's a long path, but maybe we're back on the right one again. Sure hope so.
the FBI is offering a reward of up to $20,000 for information leading to the location of Amanda Jones and her son Hayden, and or for information leading to the identity of the person or people involved with their disappearance. We thank you for listening. I'm Katie Corman.
I'm Andy Banker.